Hello, and welcome to this season of Alter Eagle. I am your host, Laura Krigo. Let's keep the conversation going. This episode is brought to you by Robert Stevens Jewelers. Thank you to our sponsors for your support on our first season of the Alter Eagle podcast. Today, I am joined by Brian P. Heilman, is an accomplished researcher and expert in the fields of gender equality, violence prevention, and men's health. Over 15 years of international leadership experience, he has spearheaded influential studies and reports that continue to influence policy, practice, and public understanding of these important issues. As Senior Research Fellow at MOvember, Heilman is leading an effort to promote healthy definitions of masculinity under the auspices of the new MOvember Institute of Men's Health. Brian, welcome.
Thank you. You got it. Perfect.
Okay, great. I said it. I did it. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to me. As I said before, I had a little bit of experience with MOvember when I lived in California. So I really would love to sit down and talk to you about how you started with MOvember, obviously a global organization that started in Australia. So I think the biggest thing that I have to start with is your why. Like, why not only are you involved with MOvember, but why do you do what you do?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Laura. And, thanks for the invitation. And it's cool to be part of your podcast project, which is trying to, introduce pretty interesting conversations in your community. So it's a nice fit, I think, between our mission and yours. So it's really nice to be here. And as we were preparing, you asked me to think about my why. And I'm comfortable talking about even my background, what inspires me to be doing research on things like gender and men and health and so on. I grew up in a working class family in Wisconsin. I'm the eldest grandson of a grandfather who worked for 40 years in a freezer room of a Coca-Cola bottling company, and another grandpa who famously raced his brother riding on horseback when he was on foot, kind of a guy who did some sharecropping and worked at a factory for heaters and air conditioners for most of his career. And then, my two grandmas who are still alive, who I remain really close with and really were the primary kind of caregivers of our family. I'm still, really close with this big family in Wisconsin, but I take it seriously that I'm the first of a first generation who went to college and even pursued a master's degree and traveled wide places around the world. I had an early period in my career where I lived and worked in a village in India. And, these are experiences and opportunities that are pretty rare in my family. And so I take it pretty seriously that and honestly, I don't even feel like in my current generation, I'm going to be the one to make more money than the generation before and the generation before. I'm not even sure that's true, but I think, what I do feel like I can contribute is, these kind of global experiences and doing just tons of learning and, helping them be a vector back to my family for just kind of some new ways of thinking about stuff and connections to parts of the world that they wouldn't have thought they would otherwise, or to topics they wouldn't. And I kind of just always been drawn to the biggest issues, the big issues of life. And I was an English major in undergrad, and that meant, writing poems about big feelings. And, so even though I'm not writing poems anymore, I think when you get into something like someone's own identity, their health, the existence of violence in various ways in life, these are elements that everybody has to go through, everybody has to interact with. We can all speak to, I'm a man and I believe this, and this is what's important to me, and this is how I take care of myself. These are issues that everybody can relate to. So it's really speaks to me to work on issues that are relevant to literally every single person who's alive. I channeled a lot of that focus on men. I felt like as a guy, I have an interest in, I have a childhood, I have a whole life experience of, hearing the messages and, absorbing what I've been told about how to be a good man, how to man up, and, some of those messages about, toughening up and shaking it off and walking it off and whatever, you can kind of see, and we're having more conversations in our society these days, right, about how some of those messages and, being reliable, being self-reliant, being an emotional rock for people around you, these can be very good roles
Yeah.
to play and good traits to exhibit in your life, but also they can have kind of a downside if you also like take that too far to where you really have trouble opening up, really expressing how you're feeling. You know, guys a lot of times struggle to just get into the doctor, take care of themselves in those ways, and I would say that that is linked to the idea that we're brought up thinking that we should just shake it off and walk it off and tough it out. So, wanting to find a way to talk about masculinity and do research on it that shows guys the like hard facts that, if you hold on to these ideas too firmly, too rigidly, it can mean earlier death by prostate cancer. It can mean like these are the rates of depression. We lose over 100 men in the United States to suicide every day. So wanting to find the ways to get through to guys, not telling them they're doing anything wrong, not like shaming or whatever, but saying like, hey, we want you around. We want to be able to have friendships and family relationships where you can be free to be honest and, not pretend like you're doing great if you're not, where you're doing the things you need to do to look after your physical health so that your spouse, your siblings, your kids, your grandkids, your whoever can like have you around for as many years as possible.
Absolutely.
That's kind of the step-by-step that leads me from, childhood all the way to a long research career internationally looking at these issues to now MOvember, where the focus is pretty strictly on the men's health topic.
Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. For a long time, I suffered with depression and anxiety. I had tried therapy before, but struggled finding a therapist I connected with until I found BetterHelp. That's why I am so excited to share BetterHelp's mission to make therapy more affordable and more accessible, because finding a therapist can be hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online. Remote therapy sessions, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. Click the link in description and receive 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. And by clicking that link, you support this channel. Plus, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. I was struggling for a long time, and BetterHelp was where I found my therapist, Whitney, who I still see weekly for almost 2 years now. So, if you're struggling like I was, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in description or go to betterhelp.com/alterego. That's betterhelp.com/alterego. There's no better time than now to start your mental health journey. Thank you again, BetterHelp, for supporting this channel. Well, really remarkable. And like I said, I was really honored whenever I was able to sort of be around those folks when I lived out in California and just saw what they were doing. And as I've moved back home in the last few years, and, my audience knows this, I noticed that there's a lot that we're not talking about. And human connection is one of the biggest things. Like we all need that human connection. You said that, something you said something about connection, right? And I think that's what is going to help more men feel comfortable, is knowing that they're not alone, first and foremost, but seeing men like yourself who are out there, who are advocating and talking about it. So it's an interesting concept. So how do you start the conversation? Like, how do you start the conversation with someone?
It's funny. Okay, so MOvember, just to like start at the start, the MOvember idea, this is, at this point, actually the largest charity in the world that's focused on men's health. But as you know, Laura, it starts with this funny backstory of a group of friends in Australia 20 years ago who gave each other the lighthearted challenge to grow a mustache for the month of November to kind of raise awareness around these issues that are otherwise kind of tough to talk about. So at the early years, it was very focused on prostate cancer, testicular cancer, some of the more physical health elements that affect men in particular. Over the years, though, as we see the statistic, like I shared before about suicide, there is a serious mental health conversation that needs to be had around men. So now we take as an equal, if not greater, focus on the mental health side alongside those physical health areas. And the thing that's beautiful about the MOvember campaign is that it's a little silly and lighthearted. And if any of your viewers, listeners, go to our website, you'll see it's very cheeky. The style, the brand, such as it is very approachable. And we kind of poke fun of ourselves and of the members. And that's by design. You grow a mustache and you've never really worn one before. And then your friends are teasing you about it, or your family members are saying like, what the heck? Or if you're married, your wife doesn't like the way that you look. Like those are kind of lighthearted moments in a conversation that then allow you more easily to say, well, I'm doing this not for nothing. It's for this cause. It's to raise awareness about this. And all of a sudden you're off and running, talking about some topics that otherwise are tricky. So your question was about how do you get the conversation started? And so I took it back to the foundation of MOvember, whatever. I think growing a mustache, as silly as it is, can be a way to get a conversation started in the month of November. But, otherwise, I think how to get the conversation started is always, a big topic or like a stress that people have. There are a lot of barriers that get in the way. Number one, like I was talking about, is all this baggage that a lot of us have inherited around self-reliance and toughing it out and whatever that I've been saying over and over. And we've kind of got to start to recognize that stuff has its value, but the value isn't absolute. And we need to find times where you can't just out tough cancer. You need healthcare. You honestly can't just tough out mental health, depressive symptoms, suicidal thinking. There are better supports for you. And frankly, we are better together. Like going through a challenge with a trusted friend, trusted partner, trusted family members lightens the load and makes, paves a path towards survival for guys where, the alternate is a real possibility. Yeah. That's one barrier. The other barrier, I think, is guys, we like to be Mr. Fix-It or whatever, or, and even see a lot of memes online or something like this. I don't know, where okay, say that your spouse is having a rough day, she's sad about a certain thing. And okay, I'm talking about a couple of a man and a woman here. That's not the only couple there is, but
yes, thank you. Yes.
Situation where a man is trying to be an emotional support to his wife, and it's kind of become a trope, a meme thing where the guy is telling her to do this, or why don't you try that, or why haven't you done this, or whatever, and she really just wants somebody to listen and say, yeah, that sounds hard, that must be really tough. So kind of guys learning that skill of putting the toolbox away for a sec. Mm-hmm. You don't need to immediately have the solution. You don't need to be an expert about mental health or suicide in order to just talk to your buddy or call your friend or family member and say, hey, how you doing? What's up? You ask as the first step. Yeah. And then you listen. You don't need to then, as soon as they start talking, tell them, oh, why don't you try that? Why don't you try that? Just listen, hold the space oh man, dang, that is so hard. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, holding space.
Honestly, just today, sorry, go ahead.
Holding space. Sorry, you said holding space. That's so important because I find that too. Sometimes I personally, if I'm going through something, I will just say, I just need to talk about it. I need to kind of talk it out with someone, because maybe to me, sometimes it's word vomit, right? And it's getting it out and not holding on to it, but also not feeling like I'm crazy in a way. For me, it's it was a mental health thing. So that was one of the reasons why I moved home. Again, everybody knows that's why, but it got to a point where I was like, I'm not okay. Something has to change. Right. So I think that's also a component of this too, but talking is the first part of that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you said that, and I was yes.
And did you have people who just made you feel safe to unload and be real and weren't trying to cut you off or weren't trying to tell you go do this, go do this, go do this?
Yeah. Initially it was sort of this yes, come home, right? Come home.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was yes, you have a place to stay. I stayed at my mom's house for the first month, but I had three things. As soon as I moved home, I knew I had to get a therapist. Mm-hmm. And so I was I need to get a job. I'm just going to get a waitressing job because I'm just moving. Yeah. I mean, it was a Thursday night I said this, and on Tuesday I was loading a U-Haul, and on Wednesday I was driving. So that's how quickly that happened. Okay. And it was so bad that Thursday was so bad that Friday I didn't eat all day. I couldn't eat.
Right.
So
These are crisis moments. Like
this
you
is
need
a
to,
crisis moment.
Yeah.
So it was getting home, and I was able to recognize, okay, I can focus on three things. I need to get a job, make money. I need to get a therapist, and then I need to find a place to live because I need my own space. Because for the past couple years, I had left a career of 12 years, lost my identity, and had family. They're like, come stay with us. We have a room. Come stay with us. And so I did that in two different states, and I felt like I was sort of living their lives.
Right.
And I was going through this thing and felt like I was always like sort of trying to keep a smile on my face for everyone else because I didn't really want to be able to hit rock bottom in front of everyone. And then I was hitting it pretty hard.
Okay.
In a house where they didn't talk about mental health. They didn't talk about what was going on. And so I didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
Talking about what was going on up here. And so it was sort of that moment. So I think I don't know, do you find that sometimes that it's, I want to make sense of this, what I'm trying to ask you, but if someone, obviously someone comes to you, they're ready to start talking about it, right? But have you ever encountered a situation where maybe someone is going through something, I guess, how do you sort of broach that and say, hey, I'm here for you if you need anything? I don't know. Have you ever encountered a situation like that you're comfortable?
Of course. No, maybe one way of talking about it that could resonate for people is just like checking in with yourself about who's at the center of the conversation. I think a lot of times when we are trying to be the helper or trying to intervene, trying to, help somebody we really care about, I'm sorry to say, but we can kind of keep ourselves at the center of the conversation so much. Like, here I am, I'm trying to help you. I want to do this for you. I want to do that. Let me help you find this. Let me help you find that. And those are all coming from a good place. But the thing that I heard in your scenario was, okay, there were ways that people were reaching out to you to offer help, and they were offering you a room and they were offering things, but in your own terms and for your own awareness of your needs, you could articulate, number one, I need a therapist, I need a job, I need my own place to live. And I feel like those realizations and the people who helped you achieve those things is an example of where were at the center of then putting in place what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
As opposed to it wasn't as if your beloved Aunt Shirley came to you and said, Laura, number one, get a therapist. Number two, get a job. Number three, get a place to live. Do as I say. I'm your savior, helper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Aunt Shirley.
Well, it's interesting because I had said I lived all over the country independently my entire adult life. And I found myself at 40, single, not married, without children. I had, which was what brought me back to the East Coast, like going through a breakup. So a lot of things had just kind of imploded, so to speak, where there was nothing in my control. I had to surrender to everything that was happening. And then making the choice to leave something that I loved, but I knew it was time to leave, and then not knowing really who I was. And so when I moved home, it was like, well, you can stay here as long as you need to. And I knew, I'm like, I need my own space. Like I felt that, and I was like, no, I need to find something. I said by October 1st. And I had a job within like a few days of unloading my truck into a storage locker, right?
Yeah, nice.
I had a therapist that next week. I actually talked to her as I was moving stuff. I pulled my moving truck over and got on a call with her on my phone, one of my first calls with her.
Yeah.
And then moved into my house where I still live now on October 1st. So it was like I moved August 19th, and October 1st I was moving to my own place. So once I did those three things, then the real work kind of set in, right? Then I had to actually do the real mental work, which was quite a period of time. And I don't know if that's something that, with what you do, if you recognize that too, is letting people know it's okay to not be okay. And to work through it. And it's not a sprint, right? It's a marathon. It's going to take time, and it's going to ebb and flow. So I think sometimes that's what probably scares people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, especially when you're right in a crisis moment, it's almost like you can't see beyond 1 minute, 5 minutes. But then I think quite a lot of us, are able to look back at ourselves 2 years in the past, 5 years in the past, 7 years in the past, and think, wow, I've really come a long way from that guy and that challenges that he was going through, and look at these achievements that I've made. Now, it's not to say that if you necessarily can't do that, you're some kind of, but I guess it's the difference between like when you're really in a bad way, it's kind of hard to see beyond the length of your arms, but looking backwards, somehow you are able to see the trajectory of things. I can share another example. Like, I don't know how relatable this is for a lot of the listeners, but I was living in Minnesota for about 5 years, 2015 to 2020 or so. And during that time, I did a lot of volunteer work with a rape crisis center. Okay. And the very first thing you have to do is actually follow the state mandated training curriculum for how to answer a crisis line. You know, there's a 24-hour crisis line for someone who's gone through, you know, sexual violence or something. It's not the most terribly common thing in the world for a man to do this, but I had been working in kind of violence prevention work. I was interested in it. And actually what it allowed me to do over time was the Sexual Violence Center in Minneapolis, where I was volunteering, we were able to actually host the first, and this is very, very rare to have this available, like support groups for men who had experienced sexual abuse as children. And, you know, it was really helpful for them to have guys as the facilitators of those groups. And we were able to do it in a way that focused on their experience. Anyway, the key piece here is, I guess I went into like the training. I'm going to be trained up in how to be like a crisis responder for sexual violence. And I think my presumption probably was, all right, they're going to tell me, if somebody says this, then you should tell them to do that. And if somebody says this, you should tell them to do that. And straight away from the beginning, the first thing they're telling you is, no, like this is the caller is at the center. They get to decide everything about what happens. Your only role is to listen and support and have, like, you have information and you have options. But if you ever tell somebody what to do, you're getting it wrong. Like, that is not what support looks like. And I think that's been so powerful for me, just like to then apply that principle to everywhere in life, whether it's, you know, even outside the context of crisis, being a supportive friend, being a supportive coworker, really check that instinct to tell somebody what to do. It's listen and support and have, you know, options to discuss, but then the person you're supporting gets to decide. And once that really clicks, it's powerful. And I mean, the other thing to say to your listeners, viewers, is these are skills that take practice, take a lot of time. It's not as if you just hear some people talking on a podcast and suddenly you have to expect that you're going to be great at it. On MOvember.com, we have something called MOvember Conversations. That's a toolkit where you can download a lot of these same kind of guidance. There's a handy acronym that would be explained on there, which goes ALEC, ALEC. And A is ask, L, listen. So ask and listen. Those are the first steps that I keep talking about. E is encourage action. So, you know, like whichever action they're saying that they want to do, help encourage them, walk alongside them. And then to your point about how it's a longer journey, the C is check in. So check in over time. It's not as if, you know, just one conversation or one moment is the difference. But if that, like the handy acronym helps anybody out there, ALEC, that's one you can learn about on our website.
You know, I have conversations with people when I feel every single time I do, someone says something that resonates, and I'm just like, when you said that, I was like, I need to call my mom right after this, because we, you know, a very close family member is going through a really tough time right now, and there was a situation. And she called me very flustered. And I said, Mom, I love you, but we can't force them to do what we think they should do.
Right.
We need to be supportive. Here are the positives that this person is doing right now that they weren't doing like 3 months ago. We need to focus on those. And then we just need to be like, here's the information you need to contact. And then you need to and you just said that, and I was like, oh my gosh, now I have an acronym, and now I have a little bit more of the explanation.
And the same principle, I'm sure, applies. There's now a nationwide suicide prevention crisis hotline. Wherever you are, you can dial. I want to get it right. Is it 811? We'll make sure we get it right before this goes live.
Yeah.
And you'll experience the same kind of, you know, if the people answering are well-trained, you'll experience the same kind of thing. Like if you're in a real crisis moment about thinking of hurting yourself or taking your own life, the person that you get there is not going to tell you what to do or tell you to do anything you don't want to do. They're going to listen. They're going to support you. They're going to tell you, like, that what you're going through is that hard, and it is really hard to see a way forward, but you need to, you've done the right thing by calling, and there are services available to you, and those kinds of reassuring messages. So that's what you would receive there. I think if we're talking in the frame of men's health, part of being that supportive, especially if it's like a guy to another guy kind of voice, like, you can sort of echo some of those ideas I was saying before. Like, part of supporting and validating is like, look, man, I remember when we were on the high school football team and coach whoever was on us all the time and never accepted any amount of, being heard or anything. Like, that is getting us into trouble later in our life. Like, we are tough. We are strong in a lot of ways, but that doesn't mean you silence your own health needs to the point of a literal crisis, physical, mental, or both. It's stronger in so many ways to be able to, like, call your friend and say, yo, can I just talk to you for a minute? I've had such a bad day. Like, you have to start recognizing that as a strength too.
It's also supporting people to where they can get to where they're okay with being a little uncomfortable, because it is a little uncomfortable at first when you talk about something that maybe you're ashamed of, right? Having suicidal ideation it can bring a lot of shame, because you don't know what the reaction of the other person is, because there's a lot of opinions, and this is part of the divide that we briefly had a conversation, but people were raised a certain way, right? And they're taught a certain thing. And I mean, I was raised in the same household as both my brothers, but I went and lived in various different parts of the country, and they have moved as well. But it's sort of this idea that, like nature versus nurture. Like, I was raised in a house, but I also have kind of shifted my way by my experiences that I've had.
Right.
And I think that it's letting people know, like, hey, it's okay. Like, whenever you're ready I'm here for you. Like you said, I did look it up. I looked up, it says 988 suicide is the crisis. Is it 988? Okay. I don't know if that
sounds better. I'm so sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry, because I should have.
Don't call 811. What's 811? Something else.
Something else. Yeah. And actually, when I clicked on it, what's funny that came up is Madonna's birthday came up for some reason after something else, August 16th, 1958. Well, that is a
cause for celebration. Okay.
So, yeah.
Even if somebody Googles 811 crisis line like I just did, it goes to 988. The suicide.
988,
the nationwide suicide crisis line is actually a pretty new thing that, like, all the regional crisis providers linked up on a single number across all cell networks and everything. So it's relatively new. When you call it, it might take a minute to click through, but it's going to, if you're in Butler, PA, it's going to click through to somebody right there in your county or nearby. It's not
amazing.
Gonna be yeah, exactly.
That's really amazing. So we didn't get too much into, like, your why. I mean, you have a really remarkable, it's going to be here for anyone that's listening, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can go into the caption, the description of the episode, and read a little bit more about Brian. There will be some links there. But I would really love to know your why. Like, why do you do what you do? And this especially
a little bit. Yeah, maybe I was trying to articulate my why in terms of talking about I'm really drawn to these big issues that affect everybody. Like, you cannot find anyone in your world, work, family, or otherwise, who hasn't experienced having a gender in the world, hasn't experienced any kind of physical or mental health challenge, hasn't been touched in some way or another by violence, whether witnessing it, whether experiencing it, whether using it, whether whatever, or anyone who hasn't had a parent. So, when I do research on fatherhood, parenthood, on care, on health, on gender, on whatever, it's because, like, these are just universal human experiences. And I feel like when I see a part of a universal human experience that we're just kind of like getting wrong, or the dial in society is set in a way that does more harm than good, it feels like a real strong life purpose to, like, shift that dial a little bit to improve just everybody's ability to navigate the world in a healthy, thriving way. So I've had touch points along my career where that's been a little more focused on, well, let's turn the dial down on different forms of violence that people may see or experience, or let's turn the dial up on the ways in which we can get guys embracing their roles as fully equal caregivers and fathers of their kids. And now I suppose at MOvember, I'm in a role where it's dialing up guys' comfort in talking about and addressing their health. But I've literally never used that dial metaphor before, but I kind of like it.
I like it.
Well, yeah. So,
no, sometimes,
and Laura, you know this about me as trying to schedule this podcast interview. Like I can't avoid sharing that I worked for about 10 years as a leading researcher with a lot of amazing international, like high profile opportunities to publish about fatherhood and about men as equal caregivers. And I was out there doing that, speaking at big conferences and UN and plenaries of, keynotes of conferences, all of which happened before I ever had a kid.
I know.
So I was a little bit of a poser, but I was.
But you did your research, so.
And now 2 months ago, my wife and I welcomed our first baby. It's a daughter. Now I'm, actually doing the thing. So how has that translated? So. Well, that's obviously now like the number one why. And the link is so obvious, right? Like if I wasn't already taking as good a care of my health as I could, like now I have this reason. I want to have as many minutes, days, years sharing the world with this person as I possibly can. And when we see that, guys' life expectancy, even guys born in the last few years, is 5 years shorter than women. We're losing as many guys as we are to suicide. Just the way that some of the other physical health trends look, there is a serious toll of just years of loving family relationships that can be lost. So it's also why it's, you never want to talk about men's health in a way where it's like all about men just for, we, men, women, everybody, we're all linked. All of these identities are within our family. We care about people who are men, women, otherwise, so.
But you're leading by example.
Sure. And, just thinking of the thousands and thousands of women who participate in MOvember every year, not by growing mustaches.
I was just going to say, we're actually trying to avoid that. If you ask your wife, we could go down a whole, but
no, but the thousands of women who get involved in MOvember, not usually by growing mustaches, but by taking up any of the other options we have, like running or walking 60 miles over the course of the month in honor of the 60 men who died by suicide every day around the world. Or hosting an event in your office, or taking on any other creative kind of thing. Do a karaoke night, or host a little event at a brewery in your neighborhood, or people do all sorts of kinds of things. It's because they also care about men's health. So many of them have a brother, a dad, somebody who died too soon to prostate cancer that could have been prevented if they went in earlier, who died by suicide. And, they're pumping energy into men's health to prevent the next family from having to go through something like that. So
absolutely.
And the fatherhood, especially being a dad of a daughter now, and I know it's a whole trope, girl dad or whatever, but my health, her health, our lives are forever intertwined, and the one's health affects the other, and it's not this gender divide thing, really.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because social media can be a bit of a slippery slope, right? It can be really positive in a lot of ways, and I think this is one of those examples. Like all of the campaigns that you're doing with MOvember, they're always just so creative. And even just now, one of the things that you sent me with all the different faces, and they named all the different types of mustaches, right? Because every guy's going to grow a different mustache. But I saw something recently on social media. The actress that played Topanga on Boy Meets World, she said, if you grew up watching me, it's probably time to get a mammogram. And I was like, ding, it was a reminder. I needed that reminder. And I was like, oh my gosh.
That is very much our generation, Laura.
Yes.
You think our Gen Z listeners out there like Topanga?
Yeah, they're like Topanga. They're like Topanga Canyon in California. And I'm like, no, I'm talking about the actress, but that was her character's name. And I didn't really watch that show, but it's such a powerful thing. And I think, when you're talking about the specifics of the MOvember campaign and how it has grown, right? Like it started with these friends who we're like, let's see who can grow a better mustache, you know, and now it's grown into where you even have said that you have all these like, you know, celebrities who are getting involved and talking about it and growing mustaches. And I don't know, I think I like a guy with facial hair. I like a mustache, a beard, whatever. I'm down. It's fine. I'm good with it. I wasn't probably 10 years ago. I was more of like the clean shaven. But that's interesting, like how we evolve as well, right? So
I think the mustache, it's kind of fun these days because I guess I am sure that 20 years ago when the campaign started, part of the idea was the mustache is totally out of fashion, at least with the guys participating in the campaign. And so to grow a mustache was like willingly doing something countercultural or something. And so it prompts conversation more. I don't think that is the case in 2024 for white guys anyway. Like, I think the mustache is kind of having a moment. There are pop stars. There are like, we're recording this during the World Series and half the Yankees team has mustaches. Travis Kelce is whatever, like
he's all over the place.
Guy in the universe, whatever. Like he's wearing a mustache these days, and I don't think any of these guys are doing it ironically the way that probably the original Australian guys were. So look, it is a trend. It is a moment. So, you know, growing the mustache is not something embarrassing anymore. It's kind of like a little makeover, glow up, guys, during this month. Whereas it used to be something more funny.
No, I love that. I think that that's so true. But, you know, you obviously are someone who's very open to talking and communicating. What have you noticed within yourself personally since being involved with MOvember? And you said it's been a year that you've been involved with this organization specifically. What have you noticed in yourself that's maybe changed, or have you grown in any way when it comes to talking about this stuff, or have you always just been pretty comfortable?
It really helped. I mean, this is a good question because I could go deep with it.
Go ahead.
The thing that really draws me to MOvember is this magic of the campaign. Like I was talking about before, it's kind of a silly thing, but the silliness is part of the point. Like you almost can't like professional committee or, you know, ad executives or whatever could come up with this kind of thing. It's like so counterintuitively obvious that you'd never think of it. It's almost like, remember the ice bucket challenge? Like just a completely silly thing that, you know, your fancy business consultants would never advise you. Okay, we advise you to take the dump ice on your head strategy
outside in the winter.
To grow the strange mustache strategy to increase your visibility, whatever. Like, so it's just something that clicks. And I think if any of your viewers, listeners, make it to MOvember.com, click around, go to our Insta, whatever, you'll see that. And honestly, like, being founded in Australia is not a small part of it. I just feel like Australians are kind of, you know, laissez-faire and chill and like funny and, you know, lighthearted in general. So the whole approach of our organization is just kind of light, silly. And like the lightness, silliness is such a perfect match because it diffuses the difficulty of the topic. So I'm really drawn to that. It's also like, if I'm really honest, and I don't know if your viewers, listeners in your location will be able to look at me and read me as like hard left, progressive, liberal, something, you know, like I certainly have a background, and I talked about sexual violence and whatever. Like you could dig into my background if you wanted, like paint me as fringe, liberal, lefty, whatever, something, you know, like I've done a lot of research, reporting, working within the feminist domestic violence prevention world. And that is my professional roots. It's really valuable to me. But even the example of then doing the men's support group is where I feel like I was able to bring a new perspective and something new and needed there, where men's, you know, realities and perspectives were brought in. Coming to MOvember is such an amazing challenge because this is not lefty, liberal, you know, like that is just not the vibe of the organization. That's not the purpose of it. That's not to say it's, you know, I don't know, the extreme opposite pole either. It's not engaging in this divisiveness. It's like there are so many guys who are kind of like sick of the, I don't know, divisive rhetoric, but care about one another. And that's why I think MOvember resonates. It's not so easily just like dismissible as the enemy or something. And then we're partnering with professional sports leagues and country singers as well as pop singers and just like big businesses around the country and different kind of and breweries in different spaces. And there's just nothing of it that is immediately paintable as red or blue or whatever. It's just like guys who care about each other. And that's a really good challenge for me to be a communicator and be like, provide a big boat where everybody has a role to play and it's not contributing even more to like a fractured public conversation in the US.
Yeah.
I hope that's okay to say. Yeah.
No, I love that you just said that because that's kind of where I'm vibrating right now. Like that's the season that I'm in. And I feel like I like it because I'm also like, who am I to judge someone's choices or what they feel or what they believe is if they're being kind to me, if they're talking to me, if they're interacting with me, working with me, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I think I think more and more people are starting to realize that, like, you didn't alienate anyone because men's health is men's health. Like men, like you said, whether it's red or blue, everybody deserves a chance to be able to feel supported and talk about it and have the opportunity to have someone like see them and hear them regardless of any of that. And I think I really appreciate that you said that because I'm kind of there right now too. I've definitely had people say, well, who are they this and who are they? I'm like, did you hear anything that I just said about the conversation, the experience that I've been having with this person and how much fun I'm having and how supported I feel and safe I feel and like all the things that matter. And you didn't hear any of that. Like you're going to ask me something totally off the cuff. So I really appreciate that you said that. And I think it's important, for you too, to be in that mindset in the world that you live in, right? Because it's a little bit more welcoming when people do come and talk to you or when you go out and talk in public. And I remember when we first started the conversation, Blake did say that about MOvember. Mm-hmm. And I like that. There's just, it's not necessary. We don't need to do that. We don't want anyone to feel alienated. And I'm starting to gravitate more towards people who are on that same wavelength.
Sure. Yeah, sure. No, we're a nonpartisan organization. I think that shines through in all the messaging. It's not about that. It's about anyone who cares about the health and well-being of guys in their lives. And I feel like that should really cut across society. And, that's part of what's fun about the organization is the potential to just reach, I hope anyway, if we're successful, reach a broad audience, that there are a lot of different ways to connect with what we're doing. And no one will feel alienated by the messaging.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to say or anything I didn't ask you? Or, I mean, I didn't ask it. I feel like that was really good. Like, the ripple. Yeah. So the ripple effect of men's health, that came up in the beginning. Blake had said something.
When I'm talking about my daughter and, kind of using that as an example of, we don't live on a man island and woman island or on Mars and on Venus, whatever, like we are here in relation with one another. We depend on one another. And so if you see that half the population is dying 5 years earlier and are much more likely to die by suicide and are less likely to take good care of their health, whatever, like that has so many ripple effects on women as well. So, it's just starting to see things in relation to one another and not to lean too far into tropes, because I want to give guys credit, your listeners out there who are guys who do a pretty good job of some of this stuff. But, you might have some female listeners who feel like, yeah, dude, this is resonant for me because I'm the one who books all my husband's clinic appointments and I'm the one who has to nudge him to go take care and I'm the one who has to do. So you have women also carrying a lot of the workload of care when men aren't doing enough of it. And so all sides stand to gain. Be healthier, lift the load from your partner, live longer to have a longer relationship with her, with your children, with whoever. It's kind of one of those, like, everybody wins when everybody wins.
Yes, absolutely. I think women need that reminder too, but it's true. That's why MOvember sort of is like, hey, we just need to just a little bit more conversation, a little more comfortability, I guess.
Well, not for nothing. I remember, Laura, last week when we were prepping for this, I also mentioned, okay, it's pretty easy to sit on a podcast and grandstand about like, take care of your health, go to the doctor, get a therapist, get a whatever. Healthcare is incredibly expensive and difficult to navigate in our country. And it's actually not that simple. Like we have it honestly harder sorry to my colleagues in Australia, Canada, elsewhere. Like, we have it a lot harder in the United States to then follow through even on the MOvember messages, because suppose your good friend does want to get a therapist or counselor. Well, they have to navigate the health insurance system. They have to figure out, okay, like, how do I find a counselor? Okay, I got to go to my insurance website, if they even have insurance, like, see which people are covered. How do you get the reviews? Then, a lot of counselors don't want to deal with insurance anymore. So you're looking at like $200-300 just for 1 hour session. Like, that is not going to be an achievable expense for a lot of people. So then, and I also hope it's really clear to your listeners, this is not just a like individual people level issue. Like, if only all the guys like clicked and started doing right, everything would be resolved. Like, there are policies that we need. There are like economic changes that we need. We, like, just lower cost of healthcare in general is an essential component of this. So, I never want to lose track of that structural policy, economic side of it all, because that's almost the biggest factor of being a barrier for a lot of guys.
It really is.
And women.
Yeah, it really is. Because even with healthcare, I mean, I've gotten to the point where I'm having therapy appointments every other week, because just the copay itself, it's just like tick, 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 tick. And it's hard. So and then finding the person that you feel connected to talk to, because that can be a part of it too. And that's where a lot of people drop off. They start with one person and it's not really working out. They don't click. It doesn't work out. I mean, and this is where I want to take that ALEC acronym into account and keep it up here in my brain. But I've had some friends say, well, how did you find your therapist? And I said, I kind of got lucky with her, because I'd had therapists in the past that didn't work and I fell off. I kept falling off because it wasn't clicking. But the only thing from my experience was that this is what they did that wasn't clicking with me. These were the things that they did that it was kind of like, I didn't like that. I didn't like if I was sitting there really opening up. I had this one therapist who would just out of nowhere, I would be talking and she'd say, well, that's the time. I have someone else that I got to get with here. So just go ahead and schedule on the site and I'll talk to you next time. And she would literally just like log off, and I'd be sitting at my computer like, and it was during COVID, and I'd be sitting there like, did she just, what just happened? And she told me to draw a circle and do this. And I was like, and then I would like be mad. And then I'd have to figure out what to do with that anger. And meanwhile, we're like on lockdown. And I was like, the last thing I want to do is put a mask on my face and go outside. That's not what I want to do right now.
Yeah.
So, it's...
And one-on-one talk therapy is just one option. I don't want to, like, we're talking a lot about therapy right now. It is one option. There are these barriers. It can be really, really great when it's great. And there's a resource on MOvember's website called, I think it's called Therapy 101, or What is Therapy? It's kind of these funny little videos that make the topic of therapy more accessible, but by no means is like a one-on-one, you're sitting on the couch kind of a therapy environment the only option. There's group support therapy. For some people, it's, like the program AA. For some people, it's maybe a church-based thing or a faith-based thing. That's again the principle of like, there's not just one answer that you tell somebody to go do. It's like help learn together, and somebody can find, for me, I think maybe like this faith-based group is going to be better. For me, one-on-one talk therapy is going to be better. For me, something else.
Thank you. That's such a good reminder. And we, talking about that with, the addiction series, that came up quite a bit. Some people it was AA. AA was what got them where they needed to be, but it wasn't for everyone. So it's, letting people know it's okay to like find your path, like figure it out. So definitely want to say like, maybe therapy maybe it isn't, right? Maybe that's not it for you, but there's something that in your toolbox is you got to figure out what tools you need for whatever it is you're dealing with. But this was really awesome. I mean, I feel like I learned so much more too. I learned that the 60-mile challenge is one of the ways that you can get involved with MOvember this month. And the reason why it's 60 miles is because we lose a man every minute to suicide.
Globally. It's actually the number. Okay. 60 guys. I think it's 60 guys per day.
It's like every, was it 60 per day? Globally. Or is it like every minute?
The US number is even higher.
Yeah, it's something about, hold on, I think I have
It's also just a way to make sure the campaign is open for everybody. And there's not for nothing, like moving your body a little bit. 60 miles in a month means 2 miles per day. You might already just be walking that amount naturally, but maybe do just a little bit more. We've got a little tracker thing that helps you track. Mm-hmm. And for me, if I can just be real, for the past 3-4 years, I've kind of gained and lost the same 20 pounds over and over again. And, like the way that I kind of get on top of my physical health is I really enjoy long bicycle rides, and I enjoy running, like when I'm, when I can do it pain-free.
Yeah.
And the link, man, like sometimes I just feel like, oh, I am grumpy and not in a good mood. And I know that once I go for a run, I'm going to feel so much better.
Yes.
Like
Those
the
endorphins.
Physical health to mental health link. It's almost like, man, no anti-anxiety pill or no anything I do could be more powerful than just like a 20-minute run to
that
sweat
is
it
so,
out.
Yeah. My thing was the bike. I haven't been on a bike. I'm dealing with some neck stuff, like previous neck stuff from being an athlete. And so for me, the walking is what I'm going to commit to. I am going to commit to the 60 miles for the month. And I walk my dog, but it's not as brisk. So I'm planning on making it where they're like pretty brisk walks and keeping track and getting those 60 in. So I'm excited because I've been
joke in another interview today, but so I'm actually training for a long road race. I'm going to get my mileage in, but I have this kind of cheat code now, which is my daughter loves being in the baby Bjorn baby carrier thing, but only if I'm moving. So like when she's fussy in the evenings or overnight, I like can get her in the baby Bjorn and then just do laps up and down the hallway in our basement. And I'm just racking up thousands of steps and
awesome
mileage every day just by doing those
She's
baby
keeping you
Bjorn
moving.
laps.
Yeah. What's the road race that you're doing? How far?
Richmond, Virginia half marathon in a couple of weeks. But it's during the month of November. I'll have my mustache. Maybe I'll find MOvember kind of like athletic shirt or something I can wear.
Yeah, you need something like that for sure. So, I wish you good luck. I think it's really important for us to sort of set goals for ourselves, that get us out of our comfort zone. Physically, I am on the wavelength of like everybody should have some sort of physical something that they're like, and it doesn't have to be super crazy or sometimes words. I talk a lot, so then I get to a certain point in the day where I'm like, I can't think of the word that I want to say. Ambitious was the word.
Remember walk the mall? Do people walk the mall anymore?
I told my mom, I was like, you need to go walk in the mall because. I mean, think about it. If you went up there and you're like, I'm going to do 2 laps, see how I feel. And then maybe you're like, okay, I got one more in me. And then that's it. Every time it's like, it's got to be those 3 laps. And then you kind of have something to start from. There's a starting point. So, hey, maybe I'll do that maybe I'll get my mom. Yeah.
Every single morning. Like you can probably, if you have a Y or a Boys and Girls Club or something nearby.
I have a Y membership.
And those are like lower cost sometimes than the fancy gyms.
Yeah. We have a great
one
YMCA.
Day she's doing chair yoga, and the next day she's doing high intensity, and the next day she's doing, I don't know, powerlifting, whatever she's doing, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
I'm a hot yoga girl. Yeah, hot yoga.
Cool.
So all for it. But no, this is really wonderful, and I'm really excited just to spread the word about MOvember here and see who all we can get going and talking about it. And yeah, I just really appreciate you taking time.
Yeah, it's MOvember, like, the month of November, but with an M for mustache, MOvember.com. It's very clear on there. You can just make a donation if you believe in the cause. You can sign up to grow a mustache, in which case you'll kind of have your own little landing page you can direct people to donate. Same if you decide to do the movement thing or host an event or any other option. And there's all sorts of those, resources about conversations, resources about therapy, resources about how to get the word out. MOvember.com.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Laura.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. You're awesome. Thank you for tuning in to Alter Eagle. Join me every Monday for a new episode, and be sure to click subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Follow us on Instagram at Alter Eagle Podcast. Until next time, stay safe, stay hopeful, stay kind.